You may stay seated. All right. Our first reading this morning is from the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verses 13 through 15. I gave you a land on which you had not labored, and towns that you had not built, and you live in them. You eat the fruit of vineyards and olive yards that you did not plant. Now, therefore, revere the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now, if you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Then, our second reading is from the New Testament book of John, chapter 6, verses 5 through 14. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to them, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in this place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." Here ends the reading of God's holy word.
Thank you so much, Quentin, for reading. Have you heard about the loaves and fishes? I mean, not just the one on my stool right here, which are beautifully decorated, just show around as a little fashion show. There's a ministry in Naperville, western suburbs of Chicago, which is called the Ministry of Loaves and Fishes. About 40 years ago, 1984, a little church had a food bank. And at that time, 40 years ago, they served 8 families per year. A couple of years later, 18 churches and civic organizations came together. Because they pooled together their resources, they could, of course, feed many, many more people. In 2008, 1,800 families were served with 5,000 pounds of food each month. Fast forward to now, 40 years later, 800 families per week, which is 416,000 families per year. What started out with 8 per year is now much, much more. I call that the feeding of the 5,000. The story of the feeding of the 5,000 is a familiar story. We have heard it before. But this is the only miracle in all 4 Gospels. And we know if a Bible story is told in one Gospel, it's important, in 2, even more important, but in all 4, we better pay attention. And John is John. John makes it always a little bit different. And to be honest with you, out of those four, I like John's best. And here's why. Thank you, Quentin, so much for reading. So because, and hopefully you figure out, and I hope that for you, John's gospel will be the best version as well. We know the story. Jesus is on a mountain, a lot of people. It's getting dark. What are we going to do? Here's the trick. In John's gospel, Jesus is the one who's asking, what are we going to do with the people? Jesus is asking Philip, one of his disciples, you better do something about it. You figure it out. Here's so many people. Jesus could have just had his magical wand and poof, here's all the bread. No, Jesus asks and tasks Philip. You see all them? They're hungry. You figure it out. And there's Philip looking like, I don't know, I have nothing in my pockets, scratching his head. And of course, all the other disciples, and there comes Andrew. Andrew has looking around, what am I going to do? I don't know either. I can just see all of them just like having ideas. Do you know what to do? Do you know what to do? I don't know what to do. Do you know what to do? You know when you get a bunch of people together, everybody has an idea, but nobody really a solution. So here's Andrew, and he said, right over there, I see a child, a young boy. And only in this time, the only time in the whole Testament, in the whole New Testament, where we have a young child, a young boy. Some translations say it's a lad, but a young child who has a kind of an unusual lunch, I think. 5 bread and 2 fish. I mean, I do not know who packed that lunch that morning, but these are not huge fish we're talking about. The word for the fish is a little one, like a sardine maybe. It's like a condiment you put on your bread, like a sardine paste maybe. And the bread we're talking about are like pita bread. Huh? So barley loaves. Barley was used at that time for the poor people. So we're talking poor people food. 5 loaves. Well, I do not know of, and I know some kids grow and are hungry, but 5 loaves of bread for lunch? I do not know about those lunch choices then, but I wasn't the one who packed it. So I see that boy. Next sentence, if you read what just Q read to us all, there's a gap in the story. We do not know what happens next, because the next sentence in your bulletin, the next sentence in our story goes, what are those among all these people? And Philip even said 200 denarii. A denarii is what you would pay an unskilled laborer for a whole day. So let's do a little math problem here. If you would say $10 an hour, okay, if you work 8 hours a day, $80. And he said 200 denarii, so it's 200 times $80. That's a lot of money. $16,000 for lunch for all these people. This is much more money than we earned yesterday at the bazaar. Just to feed one meal for all these people? That's an enormous amount of money. And even those 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish, they're not going to feed all of them. So what are we going to do? How are we going to feed all of them with the little food we have? Again, here's that little boy. And here's what I find interesting in John's gospel, because only here we know it's a little boy. And the main character in the story has no name. We know of Philip, we know of Andrew who tried to figure it out, but the one who shares, the one who should get all the credit, no name. We just know he's poor, and he is a little boy, he is young, and nobody. Isn't it how it works even today? That the people who do most of the work, that the people who should get credited for, are named anonymous and doing, and the big guys, they get the credit. even up to now. Just a couple of weeks ago, one of you approached me and said, I read on the prayer chain that so-and-so is going through a difficult time. Here's a gift. I'd like to give it to that person. Please make sure that the person does not know that I was the one. That gift changed a person's life, just like the little boy. No name, but that person made all the difference. No name, anonymous, changing, giving everything that person had to make somebody else's life much better. I think the problem is with the disciples. They are scratching their head and wondering, how are we going to feed them? How? I would suggest to them, ask a different question. Use the same three letters, H-O-W, twist them around in a little word game, and you got who. Who is going to feed all the people? That's exactly what Jesus asked Philip to do in the first place. You figure it out, not how, because faith is not a math question. Yes, we need some money, I get that, and we're in the stewardship season, I get that too. But faith is not a math question to be figured out. Faith is listening to Jesus, how Jesus empowers us to be creative. Like Philip and Andrew and probably everybody else, and especially that boy whose name we have no idea who it is, share what they have. And for that boy, that there is nothing logical about him sharing his lunch. Nothing logical about it. He did not think, okay, I'm going to share my lunch so that everybody gets fed and we have leftovers. No, I mean, come on. He just did it. Nothing logical about it. And also, there is nothing logical. He could have never figured out that there would have been 12 baskets of leftovers. But he did it anyhow. He had no intention of getting anything back. No aim for it. He just shared. He did it anyhow. And did you also know, even though the story is in all four Gospels and the story is familiar, we have no recollection, nowhere does it say how these people are fed and how these baskets are filled. We just get the facts. Here's a problem, people are hungry, Jesus encourages us to do something about it, and the result is everybody is fed plus more. I think this is exactly who we are. And this story is about us. Just last week, Phil and Ulrich, you organized a local mission trip. 15 people. 3 days. 8 to 9 people every day. We got it all done and more. Yesterday at the bazaar, no idea how it was going to turn out. Did all the prep work. Thank you so much, Jerry and Bruton, for a whole week. A whole wonderful team together. No idea how it was going to turn out. $12,000 and plus. Because everybody was pitching in. And this, I believe, is where the Old Testament reading comes in. The reading of the Hebrew Bible from the book of Joshua. God gives us our lives as gifts. But what we have now is a gift somebody else has given to us. Their legacy to us is how we can live right now. And only if we use that, we can therefore share out of abundance and not out of scarcity. Jesus asked us to feed people, as simple as that. And he tasked and asked us to do it. That's difficult, but I believe we can do it. This wonderful church lives because of you. Thank you. Because in a way, you are like that boy. Anonymous, you give what you have, and see, everybody is fed. and much more. And only if we work together, the Phillips, the Andrews, all the others, and everybody else, especially those who want to be anonymous, we get it done. Loaves and fishes, what seemed out really small, can satisfy us all. Because after all, what do we have is not ours. It's God's anyhow. We might as well share it. And remember the loaves and fishes in Naperville? What started out small is now a feeding ministry for not only that community, but for many, many more. Because people pool in their resources. And if the little boy gave up his lunch of 2 fish and 5 loaves, imagine what we can do. How many we could feed, and how many we could house, and how many times we can do what Christ asked us to do, to love our neighbors and to love God. So life is about sharing, not hoarding. So I invite you to do that. And guess how many leftovers we might have. God only will know. And thank you so much.